Okay, so continuing on, I think, where did we leave off actually on? We went through all this, right? We went through the filing statuses. I think that's where we left off, if memory serves. Okay, so single, I can file if I'm single, and the status is midnight on 12/31, right? So say I get divorced during the year as of 12/31, I'm single, then that, I can't file married, even though I was married for part of the year. It's status as of 12/31. Married filing joint, same thing. If you get married on New Year's Eve, you're married for the whole year according to the tax law. And if your spouse passes during the current year, then the year that they pass, you file married filing jointly. And it will actually print on the top of the tax return, so-and-so deceased and their date of death. But that's beneficial in the year that your spouse dies. It's beneficial tax rates and standard deduction. Married filing separately, I think I talked to you about that. But generally, it's never going to be beneficial. The only time I ever file anybody federal married filing separately is
when you want to keep your resources separate.
People are just completely have their finances segregated, and they don't really want to share their assets or their income with their spouse for whatever reason. But it's going to cost them money. With that said, what does almost everybody that's dual earners file for Montana? Separately. Head of household. You are head of household if you are unmarried or an abandoned spouse. I've never had one of these, but it's like, I don't know where my husband went. I mean, we're still married, but there's no divorce decree, but he's just, GOME. So you can get a notarized certificate of abandonment, and in that case, you can file as head of household. So to file head of household, you have to be unmarried or abandoned. I hate that word. And pay for more than 50% of the cost of keeping up the home that was the principal residence of dependent child or dependent relative. And these two phrases, dependent child and dependent relative, I'm going to define in subsequent screens, because they're very specific. There's a set of rules you have to go through. So what that's saying is, and you'll see these in the subsequent slides, I may be supporting my auntie, and she lives back in Flanders, South Dakota, and I take care of her. I pay her bills. I get her as a dependent, if she meets all these other requirements, but I don't get head of household. Why? Because my home is not her principal residence. She lives in Flanders, South Dakota, right? If my auntie lived with me, I would get her as a dependent, and I would get to take head of household if I was unmarried. Okay? The exception is if the dependent is my parent, I can take them even if they don't live in my home. I can take head of household.
How do you prove that they live in your home or they have to have residence in the state?
If you get audited, you would want to have some sort of log or some sort of indication that they occupied your residence. The IRS is pretty, and Montana Department of Revenue, in fact, this morning I got up really early to work on one of my clients who got her audit results back from Montana Department of Revenue this week, and we've only got 14 days to respond to it. Montana is often much more, or much less empathetic as to hardcore documentation than the IRS is. I've seen the IRS accept things scribbled on, on a notebook, or logs that people have kept on their cell phones. So, statutorily, there's really nothing that tells us how we have to document it, but if there's been a good faith attempt to document, like, yeah, she moved here and I got, the U-Haul receipts that shows she came here on such and such a day, that kind of stuff works.
What about mail, like say if they were mailed?
Absolutely, all that, you bet. Okay, so that's head of household. Head of household's a great status because you have a higher standard deduction and you have lower, or your tax brackets are wider. So it costs you less in income tax. So these brackets have changed under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, but these are the brackets we're working with. And the tax rate schedules are different for the different filing types. We just went over that. Then you need to be aware there's this whole category of income called qualifying dividends and capital gains. And those are taxed at lower rates. Okay, this is super controversial because most people, well, I mean, this is completely a fair statement, but lots of working class Joes are never going to have qualifying dividends and long-term capital gains, right? You're never going to have that if you just have a W-2, okay? So, and there's tons of pressure from high-income people to decrease the rates on these things because oftentimes high-income people, that comprises a majority of their income. I don't know what you guys go, I go get those dividend checks every week in the mail. I love it. Kidding. Those tax rates are much less than what you pay going to work every day. Okay? So let's take a look at what those are. So, and they are based, these lower tax rates are based upon what your highest ordinary tax rate is. You see what I'm saying? So it's not the same for everybody. Let me see where that is in your book. I don't know, maybe this is pretty important. Oh, here it is right here on page 1-22. So if you're in the 10 or 15% bracket, right, so fairly low income, you pay 0% on your long-term capital gains and qualifying dividends. They're tax-free. So if you're in the 25 through 35% brackets, you pay 15% on your capital gains and qualifying dividends. And if you're in the very highest bracket, marginal tax bracket 39.6, you pay 20%. So the matrix there is on page 1-22. And you will use this matrix because when you go to do a tax computation, as we get more sophisticated, you can't just go back to the appendix because part of the composition of TI is going to be capital gains. You see what I mean? So what I'm saying is, like in this little example we just did on the board where my client had $2,600 of taxable income, in that case we could just go to the appendix. But if I change this and said that part of his income was qualified dividends, now all of a sudden I've got to go do two calculations. The 1610 is going to be taxed at 0% because he's obviously in the lowest bracket. And the other, what is that? Oh, my brain's not clever enough to do this. 990, 2600. That other 990 is going to be at ordinary rates. Please stop me because I know this is a lot. Ordinary rates are those brackets up there. So ordinary rates really apply to everything except capital gains and qualified dividends. And this other 1610, if it was qualified, and it will tell me that on the 1099 div, if it is or not, that is getting paid at capital gains rates. How are you going to find out what his ordinary rate is on $990 of TI? Can we go do that together? You guys have your books now? It is in Appendix A. On page A-4. And he's single. So what are his taxes? His income tax. $99. How do I see what percentage he's in? I go to page A-2, and I can look at Schedule X, and I can see that if his taxable income is over 0 but less than $9,325, he's in the 10% bracket. Yeah,
You can, but that, you have to do the figures there, where the table actually just tells you.
Oh.
So,
Right, okay, good point, thanks, Betsy. So in Appendix A, on page A-2, there's the tax rate schedules. And these work just like those tables we used in payroll. If somebody makes over $100,000 or has more than $100,000 of TI, you have to go here to do the calculation. If they're under $100,000, you can just go to the handy dandy little charts and just pick the number up. You with me? Sure. So in the appendix, yeah, slow me down whenever you need to do it. And these are like very basic things you have to be able to do. So on page A-2, if your TI is more than $100,000, you have to go use these schedules. They're based on filing types, right? Single, head of household, married, and joint married filing. Separately, you have to go calculate their tax. But if their taxable income is less than 100 grand, you can just flip over and just pull the number based on filing status and TI. And in all reality, your software is going to spit it out to you. But you have to do it for your manual recap, don't you? You've got to go calculate that and put it in your manual recap. And my point of getting a little bit more advanced here was, that's all fine and dandy until somebody's got $80,000 of TI and 20 grand of that is capital gains. What do you do with that? Somebody's got $80,000, they're single. Let's work through this. $80,000 of taxable income, and they're single, and $20,000 of that is capital gains. What do I have to do? Let's see if I can get this captured. You do. You have to split the TI. Split the TI for me into two numbers. Then you've got to go figure out how much tax on their ordinary income and what highest rate they're paying in. And that will take you to their capital gains rates. You're looking at me like I'm speaking in Yiddish. Okay. You understand what you're looking to do? Okay. And I'll try and work it under this cover or flex cam or whatever it's called. Okay. So, oops. I don't just have a piece of blank paper. Does anybody just have a piece of blank paper? I do everything on recycled paper, so I don't have any blank. Thank you. Oh, there we go. That looks right. Yep. So I said that I've got a single client, TI of 80,000, and 20 grand of that is capital gains. So you've got to split it, don't you? You have to go to page T-2, or no, not T, sorry, A-2, to figure out what her highest marginal tax rate is. And if you don't have your book, you have to go to irs.gov. And you can pull the tax tables from there. What's the easiest way to do that? Probably forms and instructions. 1040. And then just pull the instructions for form 1040. Let's see where our and the tax tables are on page 78. So basically this replicates what's in the back of your book if you don't have your book with you. Tax tables, and then where's the tax rates? Okay. So page, how do I see that? How do I see what page I'm on? Anyways, so between page 78 and 88, roughly on the instructions for 1040 are your tax tables if you don't have your book. And here's where you pick up the highest marginal tax rate. So, single. What did you guys pull as her highest marginal tax rate? Ordinary. I think 25% is correct. On page A-2, it tells me if she's between 37,950 and 91,9, that her highest marginal tax rate is 25%. So I'm just going to jot that down because that helps me decide what? Her capital gains rate. And that's on page 1-22. So it looks like her capital gains rate is what? 15%. And I got that from page 1-22. Because it tells me if her ordinary tax bracket is 25 through 35, her capital gains rates are 15%. So now I can do the math. This is simple. This is just 20 grand times 15%, flat out. This, I'm going to look up her taxes on, because she's under 100,000 a TI, I'm just going to go and look up on page A-11 and see, she's single. Her income tax bill is $10,745. Plus her capital gains are $3 grand. So her total tax is $13,745. Do I have a second on that?
Yeah.
Okay. What would be her tax bill if that was all ordinary income? What would her tax bill be, gross tax liability be, if she didn't have capital gains, if it was all ordinary income? Yeah. Which I got from page what was that, A-13?
Yeah. So that's a good savings.
That's my point. If you have capital gains or qualified dividends, you pay less tax. Most of us will never have capital gains or qualified dividends. And that's a true statement either. If you have some investments, you're going to have some dividends. But it doesn't describe, I don't know this number, I'm totally making it up, but it probably describes for sure in my tax practice less than 10% of my clients have capital gains or qualified dividends. I don't know if you guys remember when Romney released his tax return and he had $58 million of taxable income and paid less taxes than his secretary because it was all capital gains. It's all capital gains. He didn't have any earned income.
So what's a non-qualified dividend?
I honestly can't answer that off the top of my head. I know that I just pulled the numbers from the 1099 BIB. They're in little boxes that tell me where to put it. It has something to do with the return of original investment rather than liquid. I don't know. Okay, that's fine. I can't really explain it, so I'm not going to try.
So most would be probably qualified in that case.
They're almost all qualified dividends. I rarely see non-qualified dividends. And if it is, it's in this box called return of capital. Okay, well that worked pretty slick. That was good. Okay, here is what I was talking about. How do I determine, and this is a huge issue, if somebody is my dependent or not? Okay, so obviously you get to take a personal exemption for yourself, $4,050, and for your spouse, $4,050, married filing jointly. And then I can also take an additional $4,050 for each person that is my exemption, and there's two categories, qualifying child and qualifying relative. And they're a different set of parameters. And please note this is phased out for taxpayers with higher income. And subnote that's not up here, this has completely gone away. So everything you're learning with these is now obsolete. I know.
It's a little discouraging. When you put it that way.
But I will tell you one thing that's beneficial to it. If you're going to practice tax law, you better be fluid because nothing stays static. You better be able to, and I mean, do it on a dime and start consulting with clients based on new law that you may or may not have your head wrapped around.
This one's, I mean, this is.
This is huge. This is huge. The last time there was something of this magnitude, I was a freshman in college. It was 1981 and Reagan had just been elected. So, yeah, this is huge.
You still need to know this if you're doing back taxes though, right?
Sure. Amended taxes, sure. Okay, qualifying child. 6 tests. The child has got to be one of these. My child, my stepchild, my adopted child, or sibling, half or step sibling, or a descendant of any of these, foster kids as well. And the child's got to be younger than me unless permanently disabled. If I've got a stepchild that's awkwardly older than I am, I don't get him or her unless permanently disabled. Domicile tests. They have to be in my home for more than half the year. And believe me, that is documented when you've got divorced clients. There is logs being kept of how many 24-hour consecutive 24-hour periods they spend in my house versus your house, because that's going to determine this. Child's got to be under 19, as I said earlier, or you get them through the year they turn 24, as long as they're a full-time student for 5 months or more in that year. So my kiddo graduates high school in May, starts college in September. 4 months, I'm still going to fudge. I'm going to take them. I didn't really say that on tape, did I? But I'm probably going to take them because really that's what they're after. Are they a full-time student, you know, for a semester or more? Joint return. I can't take a child as my exemption if they file a joint return. In other words, they're married, unless it's only to get their federal income tax back that they paid in from their W-2. They've got to be a U.S. citizen or a resident of U.S., Canada, or Mexico, and I have to provide more than half of their support. That all makes sense. Now, what if you go through all of that and the child meets dependency requirements for more than one taxpayer? In other words, what's 365 divided by 2? 182.5. They're in each person's house exactly 182.5 days of the year. We each pay 50%. If one of the parties is a parent, he or she can claim. If both parties are a parent, then they have to try and ascertain whose home they were in the longest for the year. If not ascertainable, the person with the highest AGI claims. And if no parents are involved, the person with the highest AGI may claim. This is a very, very contentious issue. If you get a new client that's recently divorced, everybody will tell you, I get the kids. I would get a divorce decree on file and make sure that you've got the documentation. Because you're going to take the kids, ex-spouse is going to take the kids, it's all going to get kicked back. No one's going to get their earned income check, which somebody's probably already emotionally vested, and I've got $3,900 coming. It's pre-spent. I mean, it's just a nightmare. So get a divorce decree, get documentation so that you know you've got your ducks in a row, because everyone's going to tell you, yeah, I get the kids. Well,
That happened to me. I was claiming my daughter and my ex was claiming my daughter at the same time.
Sure.
We just both got audited.
of course you do. I mean, it's just a nightmare. So you want the documentation.
So if you have the, like, just if you have like the parenting plan in place or whatever, I mean, that should be important enough to become
Is
questioned.
the
about.
parenting plan court adjudicated, or is it?
No, it's finalized. Judge.
Right, but okay, so it's gone through a formal court of
Oh, yeah,
courts.
oh, yeah.
Okay, yep. Now, you can take somebody that's not a child, they don't qualify as child, they qualify as a qualifying relative. And this is its very own set of tests, of 5 tests. And here's what they are. This is, somebody has got to have a relationship with you or be a member of your household. And this is where it gets really quirky. I can claim the homeless guy that came to live with me because he's a member of my household. He's not a relative, but he's a member of my household. His gross income isn't more than $4,050. I provide more than half of his support. He doesn't file a joint return, and he's a U.S. citizen. And it doesn't say it, but he's got a social security number. I can take him on my tax return as an exemption. Okay? My sister's actually in that situation. She's got a young man, drug-addicted kid that she kind of saved off the riverbank in Austin, Texas, that's living with her. And she's helping him get his life together. And she's like, I'm like, you can take Curtis on your tax return. And she's like, you're kidding. Absolutely. So, be aware of that. That's not a common situation. Usually it's your nephew or your grandchild or your sister's kids.
As long as he's not also filing, right?
Right. And he's not. I mean, he's working his 90 days and 90 meetings or whatever. And yeah, no, he has no income. I mean, he's homeless.
But this is also going away, correct?
This is going away. We are hoping he's going to get a job and make more than $4,050 in a year and move out.
Right.
Yeah. I actually think he is going to be a survivor. That's pretty amazing. Just really briefly, because it's very interesting, it's this thing called mobile loaves and fishes, where they take food. A lot of people don't come to food banks or shelters because most of them, you've got to be clean and sober to get in the door. So what do you do about feeding and healthcare for the people that can't come in the food banks and the shelters? And that's what she goes and does. She's a nurse. And she goes out like to these crazy homeless camps with these big boxers. She's a little slip of a thing. And feeds them and provides medical care to them. And this one kid, she just ended up bringing home with her. So, yeah, Curtis is now a qualifying relative. I haven't actually met him. Okay, we've been through this slide. So you know these numbers. Or you know where to get them. Same numbers that are in the back of your book. We've been through this where we're doing the calculations for somebody that is a dependent. Do you want to try one more of those? All right. Let me pop this up. Let's do, let's see if we can capture one on the screen here. Let's do an example. Okay. So can you see that? Why is that getting blurry now? Huh. Okay. So Jamie is 23. He's a dependent on his folks' tax return. Why would he be a dependent on his folks' tax return at 23? What does that say to you? Full-time student. And he had a 1099 IMT for $1,730, and he had a W-2 for $4,100. And I want to know what his standard deduction is, and I want to know what his TI is. Can you guys see that in the back? Is that big enough? So I'm just going to pencil out that algebraic equation. So his standard deduction equals the greater of, Katie, what does it say? The greater of, okay, which is, what's his earned income plus 350? Right? So then I'm going to circle which is the greater. Does that exceed the regular standard deduction? No. So his gross income was 5830 minus 4450. Does that give me 1380? 1380. Okay, good. Everyone get that?
And you can do this, I mean, the student can do this even though he's claimed them in this bucket.
He's got to file a tax return and pay taxes on that 1380. Okay, we're about done here. So I'm not going to spend time on this right quite yet. Okay, but so we're going to, that slide I just kicked through really quick is how you calculate your capital gains and losses. And I'm just not going to focus on that quite yet, but what you do need to know right now is what is the capital gain or loss? Okay. So a capital gain or loss is any gain or loss on a capital asset, which begs the question, what's a capital asset? And here's the definition. A capital asset is property, personal or investment, with certain exceptions. And so basically, anything I hold for investment, my rental real estate's a capital asset. So if I sell that and make 100 grand on my duplex I bought 30 years ago, I pay capital gains on that. Okay, that's not 100% true. There's some exceptions in there that just is a broad brush stroke. Stocks, bonds, land, antiques, anything that jewelry, wine, stamps, anything I collect for an investment and resell, not inventory. Never inventory. Inventory is always ordinary income, right? I bought this and then I resold it for another $1. That's inventory. That's not an investment. That's not capital. That's inventory, right? So if I do the eBay thing, anything like that, that's inventory. But, and that's been in court dispute. So I bought this antique piece of glass to hold as an investment and resell, but yeah, you did that 600 times last week. That's inventory. Okay. Gains or losses on capital assets, as we just saw, are subject to special rates, aren't they? If you have gains, you pay lower rates. If you have losses, you only get $3,000 a year. So I just had a client that sold this old boat that he had bought to fix up his wooden boat out in Poolsview on the Seattle and Puget Sound, and he lost like $40,000 on it. Okay, and then on top of that great piece of news, I had to tell him, you only get to take $3,000 of that loss. Now, what happened to the other 37 grand? It gets carried forward. I think it's $3,000 this year and $3,000 next year, right? So hopefully he's going to eat it all up. I have had clients die with capital losses and then they just go away. Nobody ever gets a benefit of them.
So if you have like $40,000 in capital gains that same year
Yes.
from other investments,
Good point.
would that just even out?
Absolutely. So great point. So he lost 40 grand on his boat, but he also sold a piece of land and made 50 grand. Then it would net out for $10,000 capital gains. Or he didn't do anything this year, so he got the 3 grand loss. He carried the 37,000 forward, and then in the subsequent year, he sold a piece of land, 50 minus 37. So you see what I mean? Yeah, you can always net it out, and that's a piece of advice you would give them. Do you have anything that you want to dump that's appreciated, that's capital in nature? That's just a very easy piece of advice to give them. Okay, and then, this is worth saying, which I don't think I said out loud, is all those reduced rates that we just worked through is only if you held the thing long term. It's got to be 12 or more months. In other words, I can't buy a piece of land and flip it in a month. I'm going to pay ordinary rates on that. Okay, I should have said that right up front. those beneficial rates are only for capital assets held for municipal funds. This is just regular old ordinary stuff.
And they consider it inventory or whatever at that point.
It's not considered inventory, so say that I bought, say, like, I don't know if you guys saw this, but Amazon just became today the first $1 trillion market cap company.
And their stock hit over
2,000. $2,000 per share Amazon. So Monday I bought Amazon at $1,910 a share, and today I sold it for $2,000. Right? That's $90 a share that I just made. Short-term capital gains. I only held it for 3 days. Goes on my Schedule D, but it's taxed at ordinary rates. So I've got a couple people that are day traders. I mean, you look at a day trader and you immediately say, I'm billing you $3,000 for this tax return. Because you have got to put in every single one of those trades.
So they're on the 1099 that you're getting back.
Yeah, you get
Or are they not
1099Bs
qualified?
that are 80 pages.
Okay, so those are non-qualified, that's what would be.
No. Okay, sorry. Let me answer your question more wholly. So that qualified versus non-qualified status only pertains to dividends. So if I held that Amazon stock long enough to get a quarterly dividend check,
Okay,
that's the differentiation, and that's the differentiation. And here's the scoop. I'm just going to put this on the board. You probably should know this. So just some of the forms. This is what your interest comes on, 1099 INT, you guys know that. 1099 div is what your dividends come on, and those are allocated between qualified and non-qualified right on the 1099 div. A 1099B, which is, I don't know where that came from, it's totally non-intuitive, is for all of the proceeds of selling your stocks and bonds. So that's where it reports like, you bought Amazon on Monday, you sold it on Thursday, da-da-da-da-da. How many shares, what was your gain or loss? A 1099R is for all of your pensions, your IRA distributions, your stock option payouts. And then you guys know 1099 miscellaneous is of course for what?
Contract work.
For independent contractors. But it's also, so it's for IC, how much do you have to make to get a 1099 list again? 600? But this is also what your rents and royalties, and then some other weird stuff I'm not going to go into, that comes on your 1099 miscellaneous. So my clients that have rentals that have property managers, the property managers will issue them a 1099 miss that shows their gross rental. Oh, here's the magic slide. Again, I would encourage you to somehow start to think about how you're going to organize this data to use it most expeditiously, let's be honest, in an exam situation, right? Because scrolling through chapter 1, oh my God, I know those rates are here somewhere, is not going to be helpful in a timed environment. But being like, oh, I know I'm going to need this. I need this. I can't pull these things off the top of my head. So I need to know where to find that quickly. So whatever you think might be beneficial to you to catalog this information that you know, you're not going to need to go back to a slide and work an example probably, but you're going to need to go to slides where you can pick up the data. Or is it easiest for you to use the back of the book, right? Long-term capital losses are only allowed $3,000 against ordinary income, and you can carry forward any unused balance. We've talked about that. Okay, this has not gone away yet, but probably will. This is, Trump hates this, and the Republicans hate this. They want this to go away. There were 2 taxes that were imposed on high-income people that were partially fund Obamacare, partially fund ACA. And as ACA was not repealed as a whole package, it's being kind of eaten away at, targeted to be
and this is, this is on the chopping block. It's still in law right now, but I would anticipate it goes away. And here's what the two taxes are. One is a 3.8% tax that helps to fund Obamacare, that you pay on any investment income in excess, and you can see the numbers up here. So if I'm Mitt Romney and I've got $58 million of net investment income this year, any amount over $250,000, not only am I going to pay my regular tax or my capital gains rate tax, but I'm going to pay this additional 3.8% tax. So that's going to cost me another $1.5 million if I'm Mitt Romney. Then, for earned income, i.e. W-2s and self-employment, those same income thresholds, you've got to pay an additional 0.9% into Medicare. You may remember that from payroll class. Okay? These are hated taxes by higher income people.
Yeah, they might almost pay as much as their secretary.
So, there's economic controversy on both sides. I mean,
I have interesting conversations with some of my higher income people. They go the kind of way that you want to be very careful that you don't alienate them because they're good clients. But they're pretty sure they know where I stand at the end of the day.
Well, you know what it is when somebody else just forcibly takes your money, right?
Yeah.
Fuck that.
Well, yeah, I don't know that I look at our tax code like theft. Okay, this is just talking about all the different places that the IRS does outreach. And then this is pretty important. We are not obviously e-filing in here. We're doing paper tax returns because they're not real people. But I've gone all to e-filing, I think it was 4 years ago now, 3 or 4 years ago. And it adds, or it takes away a ton of time as far as like manually copying and stapling and sending and punching, etc. I still keep paper copies for myself, even though I've got a backup system for my computer. I have a hard copy file. Every client I pull out, every year I pull out one of these, and on the inside has all my notes. I've got all my worksheets. I keep hard copies. People are like, why do you still do that? It's just, I like it. It's like, I like to see the hard copy. But a lot of folks are going completely digitally, so that's that. Okay. 80% of all individuals now e-file. The end. Yeah. Okay, so let's see if I'm going to try to see if I can get on Pro Series, and then I'm going to come around and see where you guys all are. Oh, and while I'm doing that, let me put up what I did for the manual recap for Linda Henderson. You should check this. Can you guys all pull up Pro Series and let me just walk around and see who's where and what's going on? Okay. Let me just get a piece of paper too then.
I didn't know that. Because okay, where are you on here? And then we know, I just know this and this makes sense. No, you're fine, Matt. Okay. No. And the maximize Pro Series. And client. Yeah. And also are ready to start our list. Awesome. All right. Okay, sign in. Because you have had advice. Yeah. I know, it's pretty good. I don't know to make a part of this answer. Okay, you're going to need to create an account. I'm going to come back. Where are you going?
Okay, next. Okay. Now, finish, I don't want to optimize. Okay, maximize the window. Yeah.
And then file new. And that's where we're gonna start entering Linda. I need
Would you like
to-
to transfer last year's file?
No, you don't have any last year's files.
File new?
File new, yeah.